Welcome back. 27 past the hour now. Democratic presidential candidate and anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist Robert Kennedy Jr. is pushing back on a New York Post report that quoted him saying anti-Semitic and racist remarks last week. The Post published a video that reportedly shows Kennedy saying this: there is an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. COVID was targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. NBC News has not authenticated the video. It's pretty loathsome. In response to the Post article, Kennedy tweeted this: the New York Post story is mistaken. I have never, ever suggested that the COVID-19 virus was targeted to spare Jews. I do not believe and never implied that the ethnic effect was deliberately engineered. Kennedy also cited a scientific study that he says supports his comments. However, his conclusions were roundly dismissed by the scientific community. The story comes, of course, as Kennedy has been accused of being anti-Semitic in some of his past comments. He spoke at an anti-vaccine mandate rally last year, during which he implied Holocaust victim Anne Frank had more freedom than people who were living under vaccine mandates. I don't think we need to tell you about Anne Frank's short and sad life. Kennedy later apologized for those comments. Joining us now, former spokesman for the House Oversight Committee and now Democratic strategist Kurt Bardella. Kurt, let's just start there with these loathsome remarks from RFK Jr. And also get you to weigh in on just what role exactly is he playing in this campaign?
Yeah, Jonathan, I mean, again, there should be no space in either side of the political spectrum here for comments like that to be made. And the fact that someone who's masquerading as a Democrat running for president, who, by the way, is being funded by Ron DeSantis donors and other Republicans, this is the most anti-democratic thing you could say when it comes to the values of the Democratic Party. And it's just dangerous, and it's why it's so disconcerting that this week, on Thursday, right now, Jim Jordan and his so-called weaponization subcommittee at the Judiciary Committee is planning to have RFK as their star witness to give him another platform to elevate his conspiracy theory, too cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs nonsense. And we need to see now Jim Jordan, Kevin McCarthy, the leadership of the Republican Party, be held accountable for giving someone like this, who openly espouses these type of anti-Semitic and outright racist views, this type of platform. This is their idea, Jonathan, of a so-called credible witness. We already saw just the other week that one of James Comer's Oversight Committee witnesses turned out to be a Chinese spy. Now Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Republicans want to say that RFK is a credible witness to advance their nonsense propaganda.
Kurt, I think that some of what really drives a lot of people who used to work on environmental issues and all with Robert Jr. to really scratching their head is this is not one off-color comment or so. They've dug in on this anti-vax situation and a lot of rhetoric. I mean, I've had controversies in my career where I've had to clarify things I said or things that I didn't say. But we're not talking about comments here. We're talking about they marched. They had pickets in front of some black churches for doing vaxes. He has dug in on this theory and is accepting money from people that are very much pro-Republican, very much pro-Trump. Talk about how this is not some debate over just a videotape. This is a long period of engagement now that is going on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Rev. This is a pattern of behavior. It's not an isolated incident. It's not things taken out of context. It's not words that were not used artfully. This is someone who time and again has made these type of incendiary comments. And I'm sorry, but when it comes to things like, the Jewish people and the Holocaust, how hard is it to get that stuff right? It really shouldn't be something you have to walk back every time you bring up the topic. And these are things that he's voluntarily saying. He's not doing a debate. He's not being pressed. These aren't got-you interviews. These are comments that he makes voluntarily for no apparent reason other than to just create controversy. And you have to believe that when you do this enough times, that underlying all of that is what you really believe. And again, I just think that we're at a point now where we have seen it's more than just words. after January 6th, what public figures say, what political figures say, especially on the presidential stage, has consequences. People treat those words as gospel. They treat them as marching orders. So when you see someone like RFK out there saying these dangerous things, there are going to be real-world consequences. People are going to be hurt. People are going to listen to this guy for health advice. They're going to end up dying. This is why we have to take this seriously. You can't just brush it off anymore as, it's just some crazy guy getting attention. No, we've seen now time and again that words matter, and they have to be treated with severe consequences.
But, you know, Kurt, words matter, and as you said, this isn't something in isolation from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and yet he gets about 15% or so of the votes of Democrats looking at the primaries next year. Of course, he has a famous last name, but his views have been widely reported. So what is the nature, what should we make of the appeal that he has among a significant fraction of Democratic primary voters?
Yeah, well, listen, I think that there's a lot to be said for having a famous name, and perhaps the most famous last name in Democratic politics, and you know, at least in modern times. And so there's going to always be those people that when they answer the phone from a pollster and go, hey, who do you like? Oh, Kennedy. That I could get behind a Kennedy. I think the more and more that people start tuning in, viewing him as a presidential candidate, seeing these type of comments, I'd like to see the overlay of Democratic voters, Democratic primary voters who agree with him about what he just said about Jewish people and Asian people as it relates to COVID-19. I'd love for Democratic primary voters to be asked, well, do you agree with the statement that he made about Anne Frank? Once they see what these things are, once they see who he really is, once they find out he's being funded by Republicans and Ron DeSantis voters, I think that those numbers just crater through the roof.
Yeah, certainly. The President Biden's reelection campaign to this point, though irritated by Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presence, are ignoring him. And I think many would say that's the right play there. Former Oversight Committee spokesman, now a Democratic strategist, Kurt Bardella, thank you for joining us this morning. Coming up.